Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Wayfarer podcast, episode 11. My name's Jared.
Jonathan.
Katya.
Zach.
Riley with the big Lee guy. Big Lee guy over here. Welcome back, everybody. We're so excited to be here at the table. It's summertime, guys. Summertime living. How's everybody doing?
It's a good time. It's hot in Tampa.
Graduating. How's that? Congrats on graduating.
Yes. Cheers. Happy graduation.
Thank you,
That's
guys.
awesome.
Feel
Cheers.
so loved.
Yep.
Nowhere else I'd rather be.
Yeah.
Never alone.
Walk on.
on.
There you go. We got
That's
it.
great, Jonathan. You're in Bradenton now?
Yes, sir.
How's that been going?
It's nice. It's like we're on the river there. We just get out. I just go home, hop on the water.
Come on.
So
I
nice.
hear
Enjoy
your
the sun.
office is on a boat.
No, I wish.
Oh.
And my car has AC, which is crazy. Can you guys believe they
Wait, you
came
have a
out
car?
with that? Well, yeah. One of them has AC.
There's
Well,
multiple
give them the
cars.
backstory of how you'd have to put your window down by
Oh yeah,
like,
you
slapping
just grab it.
and
So
put it
the
down.
motor broke, and instead of fixing the motor, I just cut the cables, and then you can just slap it and pull it down. You don't need keys.
How do you get it up?
You gotta. Well, I took the door panel off. You gotta reach inside and then pull it up.
The one time that works really well.
Yeah.
Man, welcome to the
Didn't have
Wayfarer
that.
podcast.
Welcome to the Wayfarer podcast.
That's how we do it in Bradenton.
We're not
That's how
quite
you do it.
mechanics. We're working on it.
You live on the water, though. That's good. That's like Florida living.
Yeah.
Like, that's what everybody imagines when you think about living in Florida is these little canals and rivers and places that just open up to the Gulf. That's
So
good stuff.
nice.
Yeah, summertime. What does summertime look like for you, Zach?
It's hot. I mean, I'll be honest, like about May to August, it is super hot in Florida. But here's what I do love about it. Right about now, you start to get the early hints of summer storms, and it's something I absolutely love. So the afternoon, it gets dark,
agree.
and then for a little bit of time. And what's cool about it is, I think somebody said that here we get an equal amount or more rainfall than the Pacific Northwest does in its entire year. We get that in 3 months, right? So over on the West Coast where we were from, you'd have gray and clouds most of the time. Out here, beautiful sunshine, and then you still get that afternoon storm, perfect to just curl up with a book or whatever. I
Yes.
love it. Yeah.
I love it. It's the
So-
perfect excuse not to go and work out, and I can
Yes.
just like watch Netflix and eat a
Yeah.
bowl.
It's good. Get a bowl.
It's so nice.
Yeah, it rained for like the first time in like a while last week, and I remember like telling everybody at work like I'm leaving early, and I left a few hours early, and I got home and I was like I'm gonna get a little bit of work done. I get in bed, open up my computer, turn on my favorite movie to take a nap to, which is Christopher
You
Robbins.
sleep to movies.
Yes.
Yes,
There you
taking
go.
like an
Cute.
afternoon nap in the, like you want to put a movie on when it's raining. You know what I'm talking about? No, you never do that. All right, maybe that's just me.
100%.
Somebody's got to do that. But I put on the movie Christopher Robbins, Winnie the Pooh, and I just fall asleep within like the intro like credits. I fall asleep within like 45 seconds.
No, my
That's the
favorite
best.
movie to take a nap to is the craziest thing I've heard in my life. You
What?
guys have a recurring movie that you put on to take
Oh,
naps
Oh,
to?
I thought you were
happens-
gonna say your
That-
favorite. Yeah,
am I the
but no,
only one?
That is really
I
weird.
have one.
I probably
See,
wouldn't
this is
share
a
that.
normal
Yeah,
thing.
I
Okay.
watch Breakfast at Tiffany's and I fall asleep every time at the beginning because it's like her
It's
just like
soothing.
walking around in New York, and it's just like
See, I
You're out.
think I was alone.
Yeah.
in this.
I definitely have one.
It's
I
so
don't
good.
know. I think that's a
Still
little weird.
weird, yeah.
We're gonna clip that and have people
Yeah.
comment if you have a movie that you always put on to
It's
nap.
a comfort movie.
It's a comfort
Do you not have a
movie.
comfort
Yeah,
movie?
it's comfort.
I don't know. I guess see people have comfort shows.
You're the
which I
weird one.
understand.
You guys are the weird ones.
I think so.
Three
Two.
outnumbers
Do you have
two.
a comfort movie?
No,
100%. Yeah.
Oh, what do you
My
watch?
favorite show of all time is The West Wing
show.
show. It's not a movie, but it's a show. I think
I'd say
it
it's
counts.
different.
That's
It
like
does
a,
count.
It's like a bowl. It's a food.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
I agree.
I think so. The West Wing is brilliant. If you haven't watched The West Wing, you need to see it. Aaron Sorkin, great writing. Back in the old days when we used to write stories, and it was great. It was fantastic.
Oh man. All right. Well, that
But
was
summer rain
Summer
in
rain's
Florida, and it just happened, and it is gorgeous. It's beautiful, and then the humidity breaks right after that. It's really cool.
a
It's
summer
pretty
storm
special.
is so much fun.
Yeah,
I love it.
Thunderstorms, it's good.
Yeah. Well, we're on a journey, guys, and I've had a lot of fun. This has been a fun little, last couple months really diving into, the long, slow deep.
Long, slow Jeep.
I can't talk.
Truck on.
I talk for a living, and I can't talk. Long, slow, deep journey of the Christian walk, of going from, the confession, adoration, to surrender. And now, we kind of find ourselves, post surrender, may it be, to kind of the nurturing of this Christian life, of the, the new life that's inside of us, and what that comes to be. One of the analogies I've heard for it is kind of a pregnancy almost, which sounds weird at first, but it's like when Christ comes in us, there's a new thing that's happening in us, and that it's a growing thing, which I think it's a really cool analogy, but can be very confusing if you can't explain it properly. Am I right, everybody?
I mean, it sounds weird because the entire concept is pretty bizarre. The idea that the creator of the universe can dwell within each individual is not a straightforward concept at all.
No.
How I'd be curious how you would describe the duality of you being still you, but having Christ within you, dwelling within you.
Yeah, it's so good. I think it's first of all, thanks for being a part of curating this conversation. I think one of the things that I love about what you just said is we set out to recover a way of imagining the Christian life that maybe had been lost or under. It needed recovery. It needed more. And you listed those words like confession, nurture, adoration, surrender. These beautiful, rich, wonderful words that in the Christian tradition, this is like a way of being. It's not like an intellectual proposition. It's a way of being. And that just has been, it has been lost. And so I have a ton of respect for you all and just excited to get to share in the conversation, because it does open us up to this exploration of something that we have to confess is mystery, right? We're talking about a visible and an invisible life. And this is I don't know if you just said it, but the duality, the dual nature of our life. And we opened with Plato's cave and dualism and Platonic dualism, and all these things philosophically are there. But in the Christian life, it's not dualist. There's a duality. There's a Jonathan who's a material being. I have a rationality. I have a sensuality, as Lewis would say. But at the center of that being, I have a soul. I have this divine spark. Where did that come from? Right? Like we can trace back the origin of, like, okay, chromosomes here, chromosomes there, DNA. We can look at all that stuff and marvel at it. And even the material life is, like, in its complexity, just like beautiful, majestic, like the most brilliant, complex thing that you can imagine. So just at the material level, you're like, yes. And there's a divine spark, a soulishness that humans have, this capacity to think and act and feel in harmony and in relationship and with love. And we go, where's that part come from? Mm-hmm. And I think once you start thinking that, then you're like, well, that's not so unusual that there would be a divine spark of life that is the soulish part of me. Even when we talk about, like, the spectrum of light, what's visible and invisible, and most of the light spectrum, we just can't even perceive with our eyes. So we're nested within something that we see only this much of. And so I think that's where it gets to be cool, is to realize, like, no, that thing I intuitively know about myself, that I have a soul. Yeah. That is a part of me, and it's a legitimate part of me that I can pay attention to. And I think that's becoming there's more people interested in that. So I don't know if that answers your question, but it's duality, right? Duality, that I am visible and invisible. There's a soulishness to me, and that's equally is much a part of my being. Where did that come from? And who made that? And who births that? Right? Mm-hmm. Jesus said something like that, born not of natural descent or human will. And he was alluding to this part of us that's not born of natural descent or human will. It wasn't a part of your material reproduction. There's a spark of your life that is God-breathed. Who has that power, right?
Mm-hmm. Which is a completely different way of thinking about our faith, and that, dwelling in us, like you said. I think it sometimes people can look at their faith more as like a Costco membership. I feel like we've said that before, where it's like something I subscribe to that's like this external thing that I'm participating in, rather than like this internal transformation. Because it's so hard to understand what Holy Spirit and what that actually means for that to grow and like live inside of us.
Completely. I mean, even now I'm joining like all these different athletic clubs in the sense of like pickleball and running and things that are going to like better me. And it's almost like a selfish thing in the sense of like, I want to be more fit and I want to feel better. And I. But for a long time with like a spiritual journey, like, you know, Christianity, I thought, oh, this is how I will just digest the universe and it'll just help me make sense of life and it'll be better for me. Like it's always in like me. But once you realize like, no, this is like a complete like mindset and life shift and you will never see life the same again. It's something so much greater than you could even imagine. Like it's not just a self-love thing. It's a God love thing. It's just so much bigger than you could even imagine. So I don't know. That's just my little tidbit on what you guys are throwing out right now.
Yeah. We went going back a few episodes to adoration, like the adoratio, in that like kiss of the feet, kiss of the hand, kiss of the mouth, this God breathed life. It's not just me like doing Christian things and like doing them really well and me trying to be a good religious person. The conversation Jesus was having was something totally different. He was like, the wind blows where it blows. And what he was getting at is you need a God-breathed life. Only God can give you that breath of life. You're a material being. He did create that, right? But there is a part of you that needs that breath of God to breathe his life into you. And that's what he that was mystery, right? People were like, say more.
Yeah.
Right. And even in those first encounters of really understanding your faith, you feel that love and you feel that impact and you feel so good about yourself. And then all of a sudden you just, you know, life happens, you get distracted. The cave is luring you in the background, but then you have this desire to feel that fulfillment again. And so you go back into all the things with the selfishness of, I need some clarity and I feel sad and I feel this and that. And it's all the negatives. There's, my dad recently read A Farewell to Arms. And while he's the main character was in war, he said everyone in sadness becomes a Christian because it's like you're wanting some source of comfort, but in reality, it's like the overall just impact of knowing God. And so, with that being said, it's we always talk about it from podcast to podcast where like you need to keep Christ in the center, and understand like you want to be like Him and not just, you know, doing it for the goodness of feeling good.
Yeah.
I think it'd be hard because you can, you know, the process of trying to, you know, remember what we're talking about, nurturing your faith. You can want to just like do the right things. You know, it can go to church, to pray, to like get in the Bible, like to do to be nice to your neighbor, like all these different things. But there can be an emptiness in those like just change of habits where you're like trying really hard to like make it happen. It's like I've been there where it's like I feel like I'm doing all the right things and not feeling fulfilled or like full or like feeling like God is like engaging with me in those moments.
Yeah.
Completely.
So what do you do instead if you're not supposed to just do these things for yourself to feel better? What would you say you do instead?
Yeah, I think that's the hard thing. I think you really have to wrestle with, you know, how you're approaching each of these tasks. If it's a, you know, just pure, like I'm going to get this task done, I think it's always going to feel a little bit empty, you know, rather than like, it's like if you were going on a date or you're going to meet a friend, like you'd be excited to go do that and like hang out with them and do something with them. And it's like, you're going to approach that way differently than if you were, you know, hired to do a job if you're just going to go work out by yourself. It's like you might be a little excited about it, but you're going to be more excited if you're going to it as like with a friend. If that makes sense.
I think it. Oh, you go for it.
I was going to say, so do you think it's the desire, like you should be focusing on, I want to get to know God better and reflect Him, be like Him. So these are the tools that I do to get there.
Well, I think the desire is a huge part of it. You got to want to grow closer to God. Like I think you can definitely find yourself in seasons where you don't want that. And so the motions of pursuing God and drawing near to Him is key. But if you're doing it kind of expecting these just crazy results of I'm going to pray, I'm going to be in the Word today, then all of a sudden I'm going to feel this waterfall of joy and everything's going to be merry and life's going to be great. It's like I think you're going to always maybe be a little disappointed because that doesn't always come. It does sometimes, but not always. And so the reality of I'm not doing this to get something, I'm just doing this to pursue a relationship with God is a different thing. Because I think, like you're saying, like sad people come to Christ a lot. And I think it's because we want something from it. And if you want something that's not anything other than God, it's going to be disappointing and it's going to not lead to ultimate joy and growth and the nurturing of that inside of you. In my experience.
Yeah, I think there's that sense there of like the difference of you saying openly you want to grow in your faith compared to you actually like surrendering your life and surrendering the things that are going to help you get to that place. And I think that's almost the difference that you're getting at, Jared.
I was just gonna say that, Riley, where it's like it
Same
depends. It depends on the energy. I feel like that's the biggest thing, and that's like the root of the entire relationship with God. It's not just a surface level like, oh, I really like the song, it makes me feel some cool vibe. Like it's so much deeper, and I think on a lot of that is just stillness and understanding your own discernment of saying, do these certain people make me closer to looking more like Jesus? Or did that conversation make me feel good, or did it make me feel bad? Or did that movie or show put me in a good mindset, or did it completely throw me off? Like, I mean, it's as simple as last night I was watching a TV show called Baby Reindeer, and I was up for another 2 hours because I couldn't fall asleep because I felt
Reindeer.
It was so like, I felt so, I don't even know what the word is, awful. Like, I don't know. It's just, it was so.
What would you watch?
It was so draining because it's pop culture right now.
Oh.
And it's like,
Christmas
does something
movie?
make you? No, it's not a Christmas movie. And it's just like as simple as that. And so I think what your question is kind of alluding to is like, how do you get back into that like feeling without? Because it's like people tell you, okay, go to Bible study, go to worship, go to church, and that's how you'll get closer to God. But like you're saying, like sometimes habits can be really empty. And so it's going back into stillness for me. And I've for a long time misunderstood what stillness meant. I thought it was sitting and praying and be quiet. But I think with maturity, I've realized that stillness is just being with things and people and places that bring that Jesus energy in that sense. If that makes sense. I don't know. Sometimes my brain feels and it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've said it a billion times on this podcast. Like, if you think you're going to be able to figure out all the answers to like exploring and growing in your faith on your own, then like you're crazy. And we're not going to be able to give you all those answers either. And I think that's where that part of going back up to that vision up and saying, asking God to guide you, like how, like, God, how do I do this? I want to grow my relationship with you. Like, I desire you more in my life. I desire you to be in the center. How do I get there? I need you to help guide me. And that's like that open, transcendent posture of looking to him. So you're vision up and you're saying, I want you to look more in me. And you have to ask him and you have to surrender to him for that to happen. And that's where you start to nurture your faith. You grow your relationship with him and you see that vision in, you're going from up to in.
That's the prayer that you pray every night with Jude, right?
Yeah. I mean, that literally is. And this is what we say, like this whole thing when Jesus said, I came that you may have life and life to the full. And you just imagine having that conversation. You're like, what are you talking about? Like, I have a pretty full life. The rich young ruler, any of these people that he encountered, the leaders of the time, or what's he saying? And this idea is we're made in the image of God. Everybody has that. Regardless, I mean, like the human persons, we've talked about no mere mortals. Every person is made in the image of God. And we're created to have our being and to move and have our being in his likeness. And this is kind of the classic thing, is that sin turns us in on ourselves. And so the creature becomes an inwardly corrupted, like self-seeking, self-referential being. And it becomes smaller and caves in on itself. And Jesus comes and goes, that's not what you were made for. I came that you'd have life and life to the full. And you imagine like a plant springing into the fullness of life. And that's that kind of up to in that Riley's talking about, the being irradiated by the life of God and having that life placed in us. And then what? Well, when I nurture it, my life actually widens out. I mean, that's the whole wayfaring, even in our mark for this show. It's that journey that widens us out and takes us out. So what Katya is describing then is like, okay, now I know what the point is, right? Jesus has put this new life in me. I was made in his image, and I'm to walk in his likeness. And that becomes this like, okay, I'm going to nurture that life. I want him to increase. I want to look more and more like him. That's the prayer with Jude. And the first thing is surrender, right? I can't do that without the breath of God breathing that life into me. I have his image, but I need that life of him in me so that I can then walk in his likeness. And so my prayer and my desire becomes, I want to look more like him. I want that life to mature in me over the long course of my life. And that's where we really go, okay, does what is it? Tiny reindeer?
Oh, baby reindeer.
Baby reindeer. Yeah.
So
the scriptures that were like, oh, think on whatever is good, true, and holy, right? We're like, oh, those are just nice things we put on our refrigerator. No, like love delights in truth. Like, what's it saying? Well, who you were made to be responds and resonates with beauty and goodness and truth, and it pulls you out. When I meditate, saturate in joy and delight in those things that are beauty and good and true, then my character is enlarged. But when I turn my attention and give myself to things that are lesser than that or turned in on themselves, then there's a diminishing of who I was made to be, and I feel that too, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
completely. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It's those dang scary movies and shows. And it's so sad because it's like these things are based off true stories. And so that's where the intrigue is, where we're talking truth. Well, these are facts that happen, and it's scary. Like, the world isn't, like, sometimes we can't ignore the sad and scary things that happen. But I think when you have that source of, there's something that just is never ending, like our life might come to an end, but there's something that's greater that just keeps going, that really brings a lot of peace to the soul. And I have to correct myself with the farewell of arms quote. It's in war everyone becomes a Christian, not in sadness.
Yeah.
Just for the record.
Book recommendation.
Ding.
Ding,
oh my
ding.
gosh, my first.
Good. So
You beat Jared to it. Jared
good.
forgot about it. So.
I didn't
Life is a book
catch
club.
it.
That's good.
Yeah, like nurturing that life inside of you is like hard and I think difficult because there is a lot of sadness in the world, and it's like how you go about trying to do that in your life I think can be really difficult because you have to start maybe cutting things out and like changing the way that you engage with, culture, change the way you're, eating food. Shout out Five Guys. Jonathan,
Gosh, sponsor us, please.
I've been thinking about Five Guys
please. Cajun fries, extra crispy. Jonathan, how's that looked, as you've continued to walk and started to, maybe prune things out of your life? What does that process look like?
Your quote made me remember a conversation I had, your quote that in war everyone finds God. And I was talking to a Air Force chaplain, and he had been on some deployments to the Middle East, and he had seen combat and been with guys there that had seen combat. And what he said was that a lot of people were switching to the Anglican church. And the interesting thing about that church is it's very liturgical, and you move your body and you act in a way. And I think that's something that we in the modern church has lost in a lot of ways. And it's the liturgies and the actions of moving your body, and then your spirit tends to follow.
This is a great way to enter into that conversation, just about habits and practice that are helpful, right? And that there's something to be discussed there, because am I living Christianly? And this gets so fun to have this conversation because people go, well, so Jonathan, are you saying I have to do certain things in order to like be a Christian? And you go, no. And if I am a Christian, my body might do certain things, right? Like wash your feet, right? There's things that are embodied that are they're consistent or coherent with the Christian life. And that is a pushback against an Enlightenment kind of disembodied faith that says, well, I'm a baseball player in my head. I never swing a bat. I don't run the bases. I don't actually participate. But in my head, I'm a baseball player. You go, nobody would ever say that. You would say, like, my body knows what it is to swing a bat. There is a reality to that. And that's where we have to get into a definition of love. If God is love, love isn't just an abstract idea. Love's this embodied way. Yeah.
Oh, love is patient. Love is kind.
Come on, right? That old classic way of saying Riley is patient. Okay, Riley is kind. Jonathan loves the truth, right? These things that you go, well, is that just in my head? Or what does it look like in my body? What are the habits and practices of being patient?
Yeah. I mean, what comes to mind, just because I feel like this is a very easy example, is like in relationships. Because like, I feel like you can tell a lot with body movement. And sometimes like when I'm just sitting at a coffee shop, there'll be like two couples sit in front of me, couple A and couple B. Couple A is like facing each other. You can tell that they're engaged in the conversation. Like there's a connection there. And then like couple B is just completely disconnected on their phones. Like just they're not present with each other. And it's like I haven't spoken a word to these people, but like you can tell their whole story just by sitting there. I mean, maybe not. Maybe I'm just judging a little too much. But like I feel like you can really tell a lot in body language. And it's exactly what you're saying. Like, how are we walking without saying anything that's going to bring us closer to God? Because, like, I don't know. I am a big believer in you can talk the talk, but if you can't walk the walk, it's not the same thing.
Your question sounded a lot like a standardized test like question, like couple A, couple B.
Yeah. It's that time of year.
It's just easy to imagine. So.
But it's true. Like you think about a relationship with God, like, okay, I'm in relationship with this being, this God who is love and loves me. And I say that's true in my head, but my face doesn't express it. My body doesn't express it. You would never know from the outside. The Christian faith, the incarnation, the beauty and the wonder of it is that it's an embodied faith. These are just, they're not abstracted principles. And that's transformation, right? I begin to look more like love, and love is patient. It has definable character.
Why is it so easy? So when you use the example of the baseball player, like that's such an easy way where you go, of course, if the guy's not playing baseball, I thought of a triathlete. If he's not running, if he's not biking, if he's not swimming, like it's hard to claim that you're a triathlete. But when we do that in the Christian walk, that can feel so, you can almost tense up that it's like you're telling me I have to do things to be a Christian. It's like, why do we view that differently? Why is that like such a tension? Because I feel like probably people at home didn't tense up when you said baseball, but then we're like, yeah, you need to pray, you need to like be in your Bible, like that's part of the Christian walk, but it feels different.
I love it. This is so good. I'm so glad you asked it, because it's the thing, and it's the thing that's been misunderstood so wildly, especially in the West, that's led to a disembodied faith. And the Orthodox, deep Christian confession for the historic, like, lifetime of Christianity was that there's a gift that's given, that we do nothing apart from anything that we merit or deserve or earn or work. Like, that is in the bones and DNA of Christianity. And we've said that, like, life is a gift. Like, there is no other outside of the source of God giving you that. That's where we would in Ephesians say, by grace through faith, there's nothing that you have to do or earn or practice for that to be gift. It's pure gift. Yes. And that gift is supposed to mature. And in the way the Christian language, the language the Christian church had was for it, is justification and sanctification and glorification. There was a ascending process of like, no, I have been born again and made new in my being. And now I have a responsibility to mature in that faith. And that does not take away gift. It doesn't take away, I'm not trying to earn anything or merit anything. And it's not the either or, it's the both and. It's the and nature of the Christian faith. And I think that's been lost. And there's been this fear post-Reformation, enlightenment, disembodiment, all the things, to say we have to camp out on by grace through faith. There's a miracle. It has nothing to do with our life or our works or our effort. And any conversation that moves us toward that is heresy. And we would say, yeah, the Christian life is a gift. It's a miracle. And it's born of this gift of God's grace. And we have an invitation to follow him. And that's the whole idea of go and make disciples. Like, you're not going to make new creations. That's not your job. You can't do that. God makes all things new. Now go make disciples, like nurture that life. And it's supposed to mature from infancy to maturity. And I think that's the fun of the conversation. But it's been lost. And we need to kind of take a deep breath and know what we're saying so that we're not scared to say we are destined to look just like him. In the long course of our life, the adventure is actually not to get a job and retire and have a boat and whatever. That's not the point. The aim of our life is to become who we were made to be. And once we understand that, we go, okay, cool. Now we can do something together. That's like what we said a few episodes, like now we're on a journey together. And we go, oh, you're walking to look more like him and mature in that life? Me too.
Yeah, figuring out that path and that journey, it feels like very messy, like trying to actually get on the path of nurturing it well and trying to get mature. I feel like that's always, it's like I have a stand-up bit where I'm like, I want to get, smarter. So I Googled, how do I get smarter? And it auto-corrected to, you mean more smart? And I'm like, oh, that's tough. And it's like asking, how do I get more mature almost feels, inherently you're like, well, that's an immature question to ask it to an extent.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I'm thinking like just of distractions in general, like the things that would distract you while you were in the cave. It's completely just removing that. And it reminds me of this quote, because I followed this interior designer, and he was like, when I decorate homes, I make sure that I put things up that serve a purpose and have meaning and don't distract people in the home. So it's like, we're not putting up fluffy stuff and that mean nothing. Like, we're putting up pieces of art that symbolize certain aspects of the family, or we're putting up a piece that we found when we traveled to Africa, or everything has to serve a purpose in order to nurture.
Shout out Morocco.
There we go, buddy.
Shout out Morocco. Love you, kids.
So one day I'll be back.
I'll be back.
Back to your question on why we might see the athlete different than the Christian is, I think there is a struggle that I've struggled with, where you're in public, you're going to church, you're doing the right things, but at home, when you're by yourself, when you're in your weak moments, you're hiding, you're a hypocrite, and deep down you're struggling with things that you're not telling people or showing people, and then because of that, bad fruit starts to come from your life. So then you see someone like that and you're like, oh, they're at church, but there's still bad fruit. So I think it comes down to that. When you're alone, what are you doing, and who are you at that point?
Yeah, a lot of my real low moments, I think, in my walk were when I felt very alone, when I didn't have like community around me that I was being open with and constantly sharing. That's so much of it. I mean, you talk about it. It's like flourishing is not circumstantial, it's relational, which I think is so profound, because we can, especially people who maybe like introverts or like or maybe in a season where they don't have a lot of people around them right now, they can feel like, well, how do I flourish? How do I, be my best self? Which I think can go to self-love a lot of like, well, I'm going to work out, eat healthy, like read books, like do 75 hard, like do all the, like the trends to try to make myself better. But I think that can still end very lonely. I remember I've had weeks where I'm like, I'm going to kill it this week and just be a stoic and do all the hard things and be just the best person, worldly perspective. And it's like, you're still empty at the end of the week.
Yeah. I would be a better Epicurean than a Stoic.
Really?
I couldn't do straight Stoicism. It's just hard.
I watched a TED Talk on Stoicism, because in the season where I was like, I'm moving on from Christianity, I'm going to do something else. And I watched like the TED Talk of Stoicism, and I was just like 3 minutes in. I was like, this doesn't, this sounds real sad.
That's not for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just very like disconnected, like emotionally. I mean, it's not very reality. Wise, but it's not
the fullness of reality. There's great things to take from disciplines and temperance and all these things, but I think it's a good, that idea of it's relational, not circumstantial. This is the nature of the Christian life, is even if I am alone, seemingly, I'm never alone. And that's the whole confession, like never alone, walk on. Like the whole wayfaring thing is I'm nested within secure relationship because there is God. I am made by God and for God. That's my starting point. And everything else widens out from that, right? Back to that is that there's Katya and God. Like there's God who is the source, beauty, good, true. And that divine spark, boom, gives life to Katya. That's there, you and God in the center. And then life widens out into your family, into your neighborhood and ecosystem and church family. And it just widens out. And so it's the starting point is relational. And once we understand that, we go, oh, I'm nurturing a relationship. That's to your point of I nurture the relationship and then I mature, right? Maturity comes from nurturing the relationship. If I try to do mature things, that's not actually that's not the point. The point is to grow in your love, right? You're describing this couple who remains, right, desiring each other and maturing in their relationship over time. And you go, oh, that's mature love. I just looked at it. Well, they didn't sit down and try to mature love. They loved each other, right? And so that's why I say, what is love? Love. Do that, right? Do more of that because you're in a relationship with God. So what is love? Love. Love loves it when I love you. We'll do that. And as I do that, I mature.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just like that, I mean, you put it in that example, in that context, setting that framework, I feel like that, everybody can understand it even better that way. A lot of, trying to think of how do you nurture a relationship with God when, how do you nurture a relationship with another person, And it's you're saying, you don't sit down and we're going to mature this relationship. No, you can do that and your relationship's probably going to end in a month or it's going to be a bad relationship. But it's when you're walking together, never alone, that's where that nurturing is. And at the end, you look back, we're going to look back at this whole season and we'll be like, wow, look at how much more mature we are now.
When John, to your point too, of when you're alone in that shame and oh, what have I done in my private life? What we start to realize is there is no separation, right? We are in union with God. And so this idea that hold on, I'll be right back, God, and I'll be in my private space. He was there. He knows. That's the idea of I describe it like grieving the life that's within us. And I started to have to realize it. That's why that pregnancy analogy starts to help so much because we're like, oh, there's another life that I'm in union with. And again, use pregnancy, use marriage, what I do impacts Cammie. And when you understand, I'm united to another. And so I wouldn't harm my own body because that harms her. And so I start to take into account that, oh, I'm in union with God. So I'm never alone walking on with him. Okay. And then what do I do when I mess up or it doesn't go well or I fall back into old habits and patterns and practices? And this is what's remarkable is nothing, height, depth, nothing, angel, demon, nothing can separate you from the love of God. And that's what the kindness of God leads us to repentance. Repentance is just that, if you think about image and likeness, I started to turn in on myself. Repentance is just turning and recalibrating back to image and likeness. And that's why the Mumford lyric that just cuts me to the core is it's the grace at every start, right? That's the thing. It's that beautiful gift that says, yeah, I was there when you fell. I was there in the dark. I was there in the valley of the shadow of death. I was right there with you. And it's the grace that was right there with me at every start saying, go, go, right? Once we realize that, then watch out, right? Because there is no condemnation. There's no shame for those who are in union. It's beautiful.
Yeah, and that freedom of living and that, remembering, really where because the journey can be exhausting and the idea of a lifetime of trying to mature feels, it's like working out. It's the thought of trying to stay in shape for the next 30 years. You're oh my gosh, that's miserable. But that's because I'm thinking of myself having to do it rather than in this walk. It's we're not alone in that. There's a source of all the change and all the maturing. It's I don't have to really do any of that. I just have to participate and be with God in the process. And the days that I really understand that and live that out, it's it's so much easier. But the days that I'm I gotta put the backpack, the heavy lift this thing through, and I got to make myself mature, and I got to memorize this verse, and I got to read this chapter of Tim Keller so that I can get it and be smart. And like when the days that I try to just like manhandle and stoic through my walk with God are the days that I feel like the most alone and the most separated from him. And I think it can be so easy to fall into that. And I know people who've walked away from the faith because they've tried to manhandle their relationship and make it grow. And you know, it's not, it closes in on itself when it's you, and it widens when it's God.
Yeah. And the most mature perspective is that realization that it's not me doing it, right? Like there is a power at work within me, his power perfect in my weakness. Once that switch happens, you're like, oh, okay. But it's hard, right? Like we're used to earning, doing, merit, try harder, bootstrap it. Like that's the culture that we've been built in, and we want to measure success. And sometimes success looks like confession that I can't do it. We go, that doesn't look like winning. Well, yeah, there's a different way of seeing in all of Jesus's things where the point is not for you to be sufficient. The point is for you to realize that you're not and invite me to do what you can't do. And you make that switch and you're like, okay, is that maturity? And I think it is. I mean, even in the love relationship, I'm thinking right now, like in my marriage, the most powerful thing I can do is ask for help. Like, what I want in my brain is to be the person who never needs help, and I will win at all costs, and I will always be right and ready and whatever. That's actually not the most mature love. The most mature love is the love that's able to recognize like, oh, there's a gift that's been given. And for me to say yes to that, that's mature.
When their crew had this winter conference that I'd go to every year, it was so much fun. It was in Greensboro, actually. And one of the exercises that they had was that you'd be in teams of like 4, and there would be a brick that they would give to the team. And you had to carry the brick around everywhere. Like you could never set it down. Someone always had to be holding the brick. And it'd be funny because it's like the guys would want to just be like, oh, I can hold it forever. But you'd sooner or later have to be like, can you hold this for me? And you'd have to like give the burden to somebody else, which I think is so hard to do in American culture, especially as a guy. You want to be the macho, I don't need it, I can carry this brick for days, it's not going to bother me. But it's like, no, it's like you can't do that through life. And, you know, practicing that with other people, I think you can get a sense and a little bit of a view of what it's like to give those to God and how he wants to be so present and there for you.
It's amazing how it always works when I'm struggling with something, and if I pray to the degree of which I'm struggling, like God always takes it away without fail.
It's true. Where do you find like in mentally you are when God answers your concern or your prayer? Like, do you feel like you're still running and you're still like trying to force and manhandle this issue, or do you feel like, I don't know,
like you've surrendered it?
Yeah,
or
you
do
have
feel like
to
you've surrendered?
you have to come to the point where you realize you can't fix it yourself, and be humble enough to say, like, first say, okay, this is actually an issue, and then usually I try to fix it and that doesn't work, so then I have to like plead before God to help me, and then that's where it goes.
Wouldn't it be so nice if like we just skipped that middle step every time?
Yeah.
We're like, wow, I can't control this. Oh, whatever. And like you just walk away. But I feel like in American culture, someone would look at you and be like, you're so lazy. Like you can't even try to like fix this. But it's like, I think you have to like a mature mindset in my eyes is like, you have to almost have like a circle of like on a piece of paper and say, inside the circle are the things I can control, and everything outside of that I cannot control. And almost like refer to that every single time you feel like an issue is coming up. Like, is it a car issue? Yeah, we could probably go fix that at the mechanic. Is this a relationship issue? Someone cheating on me? Yeah, I could probably break up with them. Like, there are things that are in your control. But if like some lady starts yelling at you at traffic out of nowhere, I did not control that. Like, she's out of my hemisphere and not gonna fix that one. I mean, what kind of issues are you talking about though? Maybe it's not traffic issues.
No, my issues are more like discipline. Like I'll be like nicotine, for example, is something that's difficult to quit. or like pornography, things like that, where it's like these deep sins that are really like indulgences usually. Those are the things that I'm referring to. But I might plead before God to help me fix my truck. It's not working.
Yeah.
That's true. I mean, it's a guilty pleasure, if you will. I think that's like a trending word. Like, even these dang thrilling shows that I watch, it's like I know they're going to make me not fall asleep at night, but I want to watch them anyway because it gives me this like excitement. It keeps you on your toes. And I think that's what's addictive is that like that thrill and excitement of, because it's you can be in a routine of gotta wake up at 8, go to work, and then after work I'm gonna go home, make dinner, work out, go to sleep. Like it's you get into this rhythm where it's like you want that excitement, and maybe like hitting your jewel or whatever is gonna give you that thrill of the night.
Get sponsored.
Or like go buy. I'm just kidding.
Anything's possible.
But I'm just so maybe finding the thrill in prayer.
Hey, it sounds so crazy, right? Where we're like, oh my goodness, right? Like this just, but remember what Lewis said, he's not safe, but he's good. And if you go back to adoration, like we're made to feel small. I remember exploring that idea of numenos, the unsettled thing. Like we as creatures desire to be afraid. There is something in us that wants to be smaller and not in control and feel that. That's who we're made to be, right? The question is, are we going far enough, right? Like, are there lesser things that we go to touch that little part of us that won't? And that's not bad, right? Like, we love to go to the edge of a cliff or to lean over something that is massive and mighty, and that's beautiful. There's a part of us that has a capacity to respond to that, and we shouldn't make God so small that we forget that is. There's this beautiful song, "Remember Who You're Talking To." The one that death bows to, right? If even alone on our Toyota RAV4 or whatever that I'm driving, and I turn that song on, remember who you're talking to. When you call out to help, the God who is literally holding the whole thing together and breathing life into you, that's who you're having a conversation with. And I think that's Acedia sloth, the noonday devil, the thing that's just that's like a fog seeping into Western culture is like, I don't want to be asleep anymore. I just live in that half slumber. And so we want Jewel or whatever, a horror film or something, or pornography or something to spark back that spark, because we're made for the spark. And then somebody suggests, oh, what you're missing is the spark of God. And we've so made God small that we're like, oh, come on, right? Like, no. And yet I say push further into that, into the not safe but good God, because there is like we said last episode, right? There's a wildness that then introduces you to say, oh, I was made to love like that. And the most incredible thing to realize is that is a venue for discipleship, right? When that woman's screaming at you and I go, I can't control you, crazy lady. But what's immediately in play? Do I will the good of the other? Or is in my mind, I hope you get hit in traffic, right? Like that's actually creeping into my head. But I want to mature to the point that my first thought is like, my desire is for you to be okay, right? Like, woof, that takes a long time, right?
You get there at 48?
No. And I'm 47. Maybe 48 will be great, right? 48. It's all going to be wrapped up at 48. No, I think that I love that you brought it up. Like it's a lifelong thing. That's the adventure, right? We've forgotten that, especially in the West. We're like, the goal is hit 60, check out, right? Like at least a beach house, or, you want a city house, mountain house, city house, beach house. That's the point. Like, no, the point is to keep pursuing that, like that thing that's been birthed in me, that I would keep nurturing that. So 48 will be just the beginning, I hope.
Yeah. That transformation can feel scary. I think it's so easy. I mean, there's the verse that's like, may you increase and then I decrease. And it's like, that is, I like Jared. I don't want Jared to like disappear in that. And I think that's been a hard thing to kind of learn through and understand a lot more about that relationship, and, how, becoming more like Jesus is becoming more like who he created me to be, which is such a radically different idea than you feel like you're losing yourself in the process.
True.
Yeah, there's those parts of us that we're pretty comfortable with, and we like those people, and they've been successful. That part of us that's gotten ahead, or it's won some attraction or affection or appreciation or respect, and feel like, oh, I gotta like surrender that part of me. That's a terrifying thing.
It's a hard habit to get into too. Like,
And oh, sorry
no,
to cut
no,
you.
keep
No,
going.
go. You go.
You were going before me.
No.
I kind of jumped in there.
No, I totally jumped in.
It's
You go.
okay.
Jared will
Well-
moderate that.
Well, I was just gonna say, like, I just don't remember what I was gonna say.
I totally ruined that. Here's what I want to put on the table, because this is the real conversation, because you brought it up, Jared. Transformation, there is a risk that we will look different and we will have to say goodbye to some stuff. And I think that in play is the conversation that says, do we really want that? And up to what point? Because, right, like you go, well, comedy, like, I mean, it might be too soon, but the Tom Brady roast and culture, we just love it. We're like, we love it. I love to see a guy just get eviscerated in his marriage and his kids and whatever. Like, I just delight in that. And it's awesome. And even right now, we're like, oh, I don't know. Don't go there. Don't go there. Put sex on the table. Like, oh, well, but I can be absolutely like, putting part of myself out there in a way to allure and attract I can do that. I don't have to give that up. I can just full throttle take advantage of people and underpay people and work them to the bone and get ahead. I can do that. I don't have to give that part of me up. All of us have those parts of us that we're like, but not that. Don't go there. Don't make me give up that, right? I don't know.
It can be so hard, and that's why surrender is one of the first steps of this whole process, is that you have to, and it's not just in part, it's in whole.
Yeah, if you don't surrender, you're not going to see transformation in your life. Like, it's the whole reason why it's at the front, like you're saying.
Yeah.
I think that's one you just have to keep learning the hard way until you accept it.
Yeah.
But that's why I think talking about community, I think that's why it's so important just to have things and people that will remind you. Like, I can almost think of my best friend. Like, I'm always like, it's okay. Just drop it. You'll be fine. Like, it's a constant reminder, but like, she in my eyes is like the best person in the world. But like, we always have this constant battle. And I mean, I wonder why that is. I'd love to know the psychology behind that, just because even in the idea of like staying on my, trail of being in fulfillment, like it's a constant back and forth for me, at least, where I'll be on this high. And then all of a sudden, like, I get back in my routine and I'm just like not feeling as like, like that almost like breath of life you feel when you just are in the moment of, I don't know, with God. So I don't know why we constantly revert back to these things of like, maybe we're not hitting joules anymore, but like maybe it's just like something is just not feeling it. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be that crazy. It could be just literally I'm sitting here and just like, I'm not feeling depressed, but I'm just kind of not feeling it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, the failure to become that noonday devil, like the not becoming who you were made to be, that was listed as that's like one of the 7 deadly sins. And we'd be like, oh, that's just me like being kind of bored for 20 years. Like, oh, yeah.
So
Right?
I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's a messy process. Like, I don't think it ever gets easy. I think it's always kind of a grind. It's always, we have to be painfully reminded that this process is a continual process and journey throughout it, that we're always going to have to remember to surrender. We're always going to realize that we're holding on to things that we shouldn't be holding on to. And you want to so desperately, we want to arrive. We want that arrival moment where we get to accept the Grammy on stage and we're now this. And it's like we have that identity in a way, but, the process of maturing is not quite that simple.
And that's why I love you guys, because I feel like, and everyone listening too, it's hard to have a real life example of things and people that are encouraging you. But even if like someone's listening from like halfway across the world, like there is an existence of people who are constantly encouraging and saying like, we're walking through it too. And like having you guys in my like physical reality is so awesome, because we're all like in the same mindset. Like, similar minded people walk in the same walk. And it's very validating, because sometimes, yes, we can have this relationship with God and it's like you get that love, but sometimes you just want someone to pat you on the back, And so this is Katya virtually patting you guys all on the back.
Is there an emoji for that? The Apostle Paul said, follow me because I follow him. There is something that, like, when we can see an embodied person who's walking in that way, not perfectly. And I think that, again, back to your point, it's good for us to understand that this is a lifelong process, nested and saturated within grace, in a context of grace and relationship, and a God who says, oh, I get it, right? That's why I perfected the whole thing, so that you could become and follow me as you grow in who I've made you to be. And don't worry when you step on, to the left or the right. Don't worry when you trip or fall or stumble, but be more excited and wooed by what's possible, and that there is something there to pursue and to hunger for and to desire. And when we start to catch that and we're like, yeah, may you increase and I decrease. I want to see what Jared, like that, with love matured in him, I want to see what that looks like. I want to see who Katya looks like, with the matureness of love happening in an embodied way, looking through that lens. And that's what takes us around the corner to the next conversations, right? Like, as we mature and as that love matures and it transforms us, then something pretty wonderful happens, because we begin to see others and circumstances in a wholly different way.
Yeah. Man, what a process. Vision up. Going through that, the whole surrender, nurture, and transformation.
I was vision in.
But
Yeah, vision up to vision in. Vision up to vision in. And then the surrender.
He was
nurture.
getting there.
That's what I was saying. Vision up to vision in.
He started it up. He was going in.
Yeah, we got it. I'm a good host.
Long, slow, deep.
Long, slow, deep. It takes it's a process. It's messy.
And there's always grace.
Yeah. And what's exciting, what we're going to get to explore in the coming weeks, is how maturity really changes the way we're externally, facing. We've talked a lot about the internal transformation that comes of it, but how that actually changes everything. The way we're interacting at work, you kind of touched on that, of all the different aspects of our lives. So that'll be a lot of fun.
Can I give a challenge?
Always.
Because you mentioned it.
No.
Yeah, let's do it. Because we're talking about, like, love maturing. Right? At the end of the day, like, God is love. Look to him, look like him, look with him, look like love, look like mature love. What does that look like? I would say, if you're watching and following with us, let's practice. Let's take you up on your invitation for 1 Corinthians, that whole beautiful section in 13 of, like, the love chapter, this classic definition, like, love is. Let's just spend some time with that, because look to him, look like him, look with him. We're going to look with that vision out. And there's a definable characteristic to it. So explore that with us. I think spend some time with that. It'll be fun to come back and draw from that.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. I'd love to, like, write all of them down and then, like, do examples of how you can be that in each thing. You know what I mean? That'll be my challenge.
Future post.
There you go.
Coming to you. Well,
Graphic.
Thank you for listening, everybody.
Like and subscribe.
Thanks, Riley, for the help there, buddy. Like and subscribe. Buy our merch. We got plenty of merch up. Go check it out. And thank you so much for listening, and see you in the coming weeks.
Adios.
Peace.
Bye, everybody.